So I'm going to very quickly run through the basic points of what we covered yesterday, and then we're going to move on to the important aspects that we're going to cover today. So we went through the filming, if you like, of the two faces of people, and we did it for the leading politicians in the country. And we were amazed at some of the results that we saw. And what Professor Avtandil taught me is to look at the portrait and say, where is this person coming from? Where in their emotions are they coming from? Are they coming from the left brain, the right brain? And what sort of emotion do you think they're coming from? Are they in control of their life or not in control of their life? And there's a big tie-up here with the meridians and the neurotransmitters. So what makes a person happy, what makes them sad, is obviously their emotions. And through their emotions and through the hypothalamic hormones, we stimulate our hormonal system or inhibit it. And we do the same with our neurotransmitters. We looked at Jeff's comments that we're a composite of multiple different systems. You know, as we have our genitourinary system, our gut, our brain, etc. But pay attention to the interrelating factors that link everything together. And probably the one that does this more than anything else for us is the Meridian System. So the Meridian System is easy to access for us. It represents the energy, the flow of the energy in the body. And if you remember, as I emphasized yesterday, think of the meridian more of the physiological function of the organ rather than the name of the organ itself. Okay, so in other words, large intestine doesn't refer just to the large intestine, but it refers to the elimination of waste products. In the same way, the kidney would be related to the elimination of water-soluble toxins rather than just urine. We learnt that we have to really look at two things. We have to look at what a person inherits from the moment of conception and what they acquire or adapt during their lifetime. And we need to talk about the inherited aspects today of how we're going to diagnose those and how we're going to use the 380 acetate to do that. So yesterday we used the different acetates, and somebody asked this morning what happens if those acetates don't weaken a person. The answer is you then put the 380 on, and some people only weaken to the 380, and some people weaken to the 380 after you've done the general meridian system with the acetates, and then you find that's when you go into the polymorphisms or the inherited genetic characteristics. And that will always be, as we'll see, the need for a greater amount of a coenzyme, a very specific coenzyme. So we need to look at some stage of what a person's inherited and then also of what they acquire. So we went through a protocol, and this protocol isn't fixed in stone. You can move it around in whatever way you want, and you can add and subtract things. It doesn't matter, but I'm just giving you an outline of how they look. We tested the cross-extensor reflex to make sure the physical, mechanical side was working right. We checked their body type to see whether they're red, green, or blue. We checked their subconscious emotions on the greater wing of the sphenoid, one side and the other, the emotional stress points. These are all sort of work-up, if you like, before. We checked the body clock so that they were in Greenwich Mean Time or wherever you are in the world. And then we did two scales. We did the scale of health, with 100 being the best the person has been, and the other one, which is the epigenetic scale of health, which is the 100 is the best the person could be. And that was really the one that tests people to see, because you do find that some people have never achieved a good state of health. So they could be coming in 95 or possibly 100% in looking back in the 100 being the best they have been, but they may only be 70 in the best that they could be. So in other words, this person has never been in good health. They only know what they already have. We don't know, do we? None of us know what we really could be like unless someone can say, well, you're coming in and you're calibrating at 70%, 60%, whatever it might be. We then found the definitive meridian, which is when the clock starts ticking. So from the moment of conception and the genes from the germ cell of dad and the genes from the germ cell of the mum come together, we then get the double chromosome and the clock starts ticking. So the body clock or the clock genes are then fixed. And at that time, that moment that it occurs, you have a surge of energy with that particular meridian because it's in that now time. Okay? So that means that the definitive meridian for each of us has a time. So from that you can tell what time you were conceived. So if you were your definitive meridian is the gallbladder, you're able to go back and say, I must have been conceived at gallbladder time. So that's between 11 o'clock at night and 1 o'clock in the morning. Depending upon then, remember to take 9 months back from your birthday, assuming you weren't born premature or late. So you can actually calculate back 9 months whether there was summer saving time or not. But it's purely academic. It doesn't really matter. It's not going to make any difference to you. It's just that it's going to remain always as your definitive meridian will be the one that you were conceived at the time. So that's the one where you need to say, well, that's where I should be. Personally, I should always be in the gallbladder meridian, will be my definitive meridian. If I veer off that and I get problems with my liver, kidney, whatever it might be, that's an adaptation out of my normal body pattern. So what we did is we looked at the biophotons because we said that each meridian has a color associated with it, and the colors are associated with the prime 7 colors of Newton were the yang meridians, and the complementary colors were the yin meridians. So what we found is if the biophoton that weakened the person didn't fit with the definitive meridian, it meant they were in a state of adaptation. And what we did is we put their biophoton color for the definitive meridian on the person and tapped the suprachiasmatic nucleus point until we got them back in sync. And then we used the eye position simply to diagnose what it was that made them out of sync. Right? So first of all, you had to get them back synchronized if they were out of synchronicity, and then find the different positions of the eye as the cause of the change, and then treat accordingly. Oh, it's a nice spelling mistake on that, 2 P's. I've only just noticed that. Okay, so if you then treat the eye position, and that could be any of the standard 8 positions that we know about, we then go back and re-challenge using the acetates again. And sometimes people don't weaken to any of the particular colored acetates, but they do then to the 380. And if you remember, the 380 was an indication that there's a genetic, something genotoxic that you've inherited, and there was a polymorphism, whereby you've got a mismatch. And these are called single nucleotide polymorphisms, or SNPs. And we'll go through those today and try and identify the coenzyme that the person will probably show and strengthen too. Okay, so the 380. And then we came back and re-challenged with the acetates again, and we did them in a stack, if you remember, with a torch, going through all the yang ones and all the yin ones for speed. And then to make sure we got the right remedy and we brought them right back up, is we re-challenged the different scales. So they have to get back up to 100, otherwise we're not, doing an effective job. And clinically, if you remember, any nutrient or remedy, the definitive remedy that the person needs, has to strengthen both meridian sides. Right? This was very important. So if it was the spleen, which was quite popular yesterday, it's not just a matter of strengthening the spleen on one side, it has to strengthen the other one as well. Otherwise, it's not the right remedy. It will have some benefit, but it won't be the right remedy completely. And if you've got a midline one, so you haven't got 2 sides to do like the governor vessel in conception, you turn the head fully to the left and the right, which sends up a lot of information to the brain, and that resets it. So again, if that goes back into weakness, that means it's not the right remedy. But the vial, which contains the frequency, will tell you if it's the right remedy. So if the person stays strong bilaterally, or the head motion with the vial, you know it's the right remedy. But as you build the dose up, you need to check that it's doing that, because as we found with both our patients yesterday, they needed a little extra when you actually did it on both sides. So they strengthened on one side, but they didn't strengthen on the other, even though we knew the vial did strengthen. So Jill knew then that she had to put a few more drops or more capsules into the prescription there. So that's really where we got to, I think. That was a quick resume on it. So I'll just flick forward because the color, there was an awful lot of stuff that we covered with the color. We said, if you remember, that the color is associated with each individual meridian, and that the color that weakens a person should be the same as the definitive meridian. So in other words, the definitive meridian they will weaken to the color. So the color and the definitive meridian equate to being the same thing. Now we talked about the different types of torches, and that probably the best one to buy if you haven't got one is this one, which I think at the moment is only 2,000 lumen as opposed to 2,200, which doesn't seem to be available anymore from Amazon. They're not very expensive, as you can see, and they have a rechargeable pack. As long as you remember to take the cellophane off the battery, they recharge very nicely. They take about 4 hours, I think, to charge. But when I bought this one and I charged it up, I haven't actually recharged it again, and I use it all the time. So they last for a long, long time, which is good. The original one that I bought was this one, which was 8,000 lumen. Now, if you think the standard household torch that you have around is 20 or 30 lumen, okay, and then you got to 2,000, that's a big leap, isn't it? As Gary said, that's more or less the strength of a projector. So these projectors are probably, 3.5 or something, so they're not much more powerful than the torch itself. So this boy was 8,000, and that was the trouble with that one, was it used to heat the acetate up when you gave them the person any light therapy. So that's probably better. Now, general sort of rules when we're looking at treating people with light and with different colors, is light is an energy. It's one of the aspects of energy, and we can measure energy when we change its form from heat to light or light to heat to sound, etc. And so what you find here is that when we're using light therapy, the light therapy will be very powerful. If you want to treat people emotionally, and to try and settle them for their emotional aspects, often the light therapy with looking through the eyes is the best way. We have a program which I do, and I make the colored acetates up on PowerPoint, and then we send them to the patient. So this is one of the best ways of doing it, is just to send the patient the color on the computer, and then they sit and they look at it on the computer for 15 minutes. Because a computer is a light box. It's a perfect light box, absolutely perfect. And all they've got to do is look at the screen for 15 minutes. So it's nice to play a bit of music. We try putting music into each one, the music of a moto, but it's too much to send down the internet as an email usually. So if people play a nice piece of music of what they like, which is uplifting to them, while they look at the color. The trouble is it takes 15 minutes. It's quite slow through the eyes, and so it takes a big commitment. But it works better if the person's suffering from depression or anxiety and things. So emotional, I won't call psychiatric problems, but emotional problems, let's call them, are better through the eyes. But for health conditions, the best way is through the umbilicus. And if you remember, we said in Chinese medicine, the umbilicus is called the shrine of God, where chi or prana goes in all our lives, not just when we're a fetus. And then it's distributed through the conception vessel and the governor vessel, and then out to the other 6 pairs of meridians. So light therapy is very, very effective through the umbilicus. Some people like to put it onto the beginning or ending point of the meridian affected, or directly over the area, over the tissue, which is affected. If you've got a shoulder problem, then you could put the light therapy through the acetate, obviously, which is the beneficial one, over the area of problems. So there are some general rules with phototherapy, which you might also consider, because phototherapy or heliotherapy is actually very old. It goes back to ancient Greece when they put people out in the sunshine, and in Rome they built houses with solariums or sun areas, particularly for people to be healed. So phototherapy involves the transformation of light energy into another form of energy, usually heat or chemical energy, in order to achieve a desired physiological result. The first law is that light energy must be absorbed by an atom or molecule in order to initiate the process. We talked again, like I talked a lot over the summer, about heme. And heme is this particular complex molecule which we make in the mitochondria of every cell in the body, which actually is light sensitive. And heme is not only the basis of hemoglobin in every single red cell and myoglobin in the muscles, but a whole range of enzymes in the body are heme-dependent enzymes. So that makes all those enzymes and hemoglobin very sensitive to light. So it can be sensitive in a plus way or a negative way. So if you put a bad light, bad wavelength into the blood, you're going to decrease the energy. And if you put a good healing one, you're going to activate it. So the first rule is you need an atom or molecule in order to initiate a physiological chemical process. So we've been using heme for that, and we'll just call it briefly hemoglobin, say, but it's all the enzymes in the body. But there are some substances which we can bring in from outside, and these are called chromophores. So therefore, light that is used for therapeutic must be or can be absorbed by a specific chromophore in the biological tissues. The chromophore may be endogenous, in other words, occurring inside the cell like heme, or exogenous, so it could be added. Now, ones which are popular, and I think we should put some emphasis into this, are the carotenoid end of the family, which is the red, orange, yellow end of the spectrum. And the reason for that is that the opposite color to this is in the violet and the blue end of the spectrum. And this tends to be the damaging one for a lot of people. So exposure to ultraviolet or the violet end of the spectrum for periods of time during our life can cause damage. And we may not be aware that it's causing damage when we're younger. But when we get older, suddenly the amount of damage accumulates. And this is one of the most disturbing things at the moment, is the sheer number of people who are developing macular degeneration at progressively younger ages, which may or may not be due to exposure to sunshine, but sun or the violet end of the spectrum is the one that's mainly getting the blame. Now, a lot of young people wear sunglasses, and a lot of people don't wear sunglasses. So the question is, should you actually wear sunglasses? And probably the answer is yes. Although years ago, people never wore sunglasses, of course. So did they go blind as they got older? Possibly, but a lot of people didn't get older. They died younger for other reasons. What we do know, on the other hand, is that there are specialized substances, particularly the carotenoid family, which are present in the skin, but primarily in the retina of the eye, and mostly in the macula of the eye, which is where we see color. So this is the part which is the most highly specialized area of anywhere in the whole body. And its phospholipid structure, in other words, what makes the cell membranes of the retina, particularly the macula, is that both tails of the phospholipids are DHA. So DHA forms a very, very important fatty acid. And DHA really takes the shine, or lack of DHA takes the shine off the retina. So we see here that if we didn't have some form of sheen on the projector sheet here, we wouldn't be able to really see this clearly. So this is what happens if our retina becomes oxidized, in other words, through free radical damage on the DHA in the fatty acid. It goes too matte, and then everything becomes more blurred. Okay? DHA is a very, very important fatty acid for eye health. Really, really important. And you can get it from fish oil, which is, probably 1/3 of fish oil is DHA. But some people, they can't take the DHA from fish oil because there's too much ratio of too much EPA to the DHA. So they're better for having DHA on its own. And we found that if you mix certain oils, which we call the thinking oil, you can actually help the brain to make the DHA better itself. And this is well documented with pumpkin seed oil and organic cold-pressed rapeseed. There's a very few people who come from Mediterranean background who are actually better for olive rather than rapeseed, because rapeseed is more of a northern European oil. But more people from the south who naturally come from around the Mediterranean, perhaps olive works better with there. But the pumpkin seed is the important catalyst to helping the body to make DHA. And a very few people actually need to take DHA as a supplement itself. The only way that they can really build it up in sufficient amounts. So the DHA there is the oil that makes the phospholipid membranes of the retina. Now inside the macula and in the rest of the retina for peripheral vision, we actually have pigments in the red and in the orange and the yellow waveband to absorb the wavelengths of blue. So we hear a lot about lutein. Lutein absorbs in the 415 to 435 range. So basically, if you remember in your minds, everything in the 400s is blue. And the nearer you get down to the 300s, in other words, 400, but the closer you get to sort of 395, that's in the violet end. So there's a very short violet end down to about 385 that we can see. And then 380 and under that, we can't see. That's in the ultraviolet. So anything in the 400s is blue. Okay, so lutein, therefore, absorbs blue. And lutein is the main carotenoid in the peripheral vision in the retina. So this is more to do with the rods. Now, lutein is yellow in color, bright yellow, and it's what you see mostly the richest source of lutein is kale. Kale is a very good source of the other ones as well. But you say, oh, but kale is green, Chris. It is, but if you leave it in the fridge like I often do, for a week, it goes yellow because the chlorophyll oxidizes away and then the lutein is left in there. Okay, I wouldn't suggest you eat it then, but the lutein, the yellow pigment, is in there, but it's covered over by the green of the chlorophyll. Okay, so it is, kale remains top of the charts. So kale is really, really important. So we found organic kale and mixed with commercially produced lutein is a very good supplement. We call it smart lutein, and it's very, very effective because the kale catalyzes the lutein commercially produced to get it to work. So commercially, it's produced from marigolds. So you have yellow marigolds and you have orange marigolds, right? So lutein is the natural one, more for the rods. So the rods are involved with peripheral vision, aren't they, for us, and dim vision, black and white, if you like, but sort of dim vision shades there. Peripheral, and very much with balance as a result of that. So our peripheral vision is involved with, keeping us steady as far as our vestibular mechanism is concerned. So lutein would be the one of choice there. Now zeaxanthin absorbs in the 425 to 435 range, which is very similar, a tighter band of the wavelength here. But zeaxanthin is the one which is predominant in the macula. So this is really picks up with the color much more than anything else. And zeaxanthin is orange in color. So that comes commercially from the orange marigold. Again, very rich in kale and other green vegetables like spinach, much less in spinach than kale, and collards and Swiss chard. So those are the major things. After that, when you get into yellow and orange peppers, they're way down in comparison to those healthy green vegetables, which are at the top of the charts there. But we're going to come back and look at the wonders of kale again, because kale is also, big K with it, is a very rich source of vitamin K. It's the major source of vitamin K, but K1, which then has to convert into the biologically more active K2, as we'll see by intestinal microbes. So zeaxanthin is the main one for the macula, and therefore the principal one with macular degeneration. Beta-carotene is more in the orange, in the darker orange, absorbs 440 to 465. You see it's got a different range of absorption with beta-carotene. This obviously commercially is extracted from carrots. Lycopene, which absorbs at 470 to 515, is a bright red. This is the one in tomatoes and watermelons, etc. So this is the therapeutic one. Again, for the eyes, and again for other tissues like the prostate, etc. in the body. And astaxanthin is another one which I haven't put on there, which we're just getting, which is that slightly pinky color that you get from salmon. Okay, very high carotenoid, and again, very important in the sort of red, orangey sphere. So that'll give you basically 5 different types of carotenoids. And we will be doing all of those, but not together. Okay, there are products which our Smart Eyes does bilberry and lutein and zeaxanthin, but evidence has shown that if you need zeaxanthin, you should only take zeaxanthin. There's not much point in taking a heavily weighted substance which has a lot of lutein in it, because you're never going to build up enough zeaxanthin in the person. And I think this is a problem because the ratio in the eye is about 10 to 1, 10 of lutein to 1 of zeaxanthin. So if you have a product which has 10 times the amount of lutein, it may be difficult to get the zeaxanthin into the macula. So it may be better to use a more concentrated form of zeaxanthin. And more recently, but hasn't been released yet, George, has it, is meso-zeaxanthin, it's called, which is considered now to be more potent than straight zeaxanthin itself. We don't know very much about it, but the research is literally brand new, and it's difficult to obtain at the moment because although it's available, they haven't released it as a food supplement into the general market yet. But the studies have shown that it is more spectacular with treating macular degeneration than zeaxanthin, and certainly more spectacular than using a mix of different carotenoids. So you will be able to, with your muscle testing, determine which is the one out of the 5 that the person needs. And I think you'll get much better results than just generally giving a product which has all the carotenoids in it, but may not have a rich enough source of the one for the person with the macular degeneration. Okay, anthocyanidins, these are traditionally rich in bilberries and other fruits, really, really important for general health, antioxidant properties. They can change their color. They are amazing because they occur in nature as cyanidin, delphinidin, malvidin, pelargonidin, and peonidin, and petunidin. They're all basically from flowers. And if you mix these, what you find generally is that bilberry contains all of these except pelargonidin, which is rich in strawberries. So strawberries and bilberries makes a complete mix of all the anthocyanidins. So any of the fruits like blackberries are very good at the moment, aren't they? Still coming in nicely. Blueberries are not quite as good as bilberries because blueberries are cultivated bilberries, so they're not as rich in their natural anthocyanidins. Blackcurrant is very good, and the darker grapes. So depending upon the pH, anthocyanidins can change their color. So they're different. They're like litmus paper when they go into the red end when in acid, and they'll go into the blue end when it's more alkali. I'm going to just jump this a bit because we did a lot of work with this yesterday. What we said yesterday was that the color that weakens is obviously the color which is the bad color, if you like. What we want to do from a therapeutic point of view is to use the good color. And the good color is usually the complementary to the bad color. Okay, so you don't have to think too much. It's almost guaranteed that. So the question is, when would you give somebody color therapy to administer it? And the answer is when you want to boost their energy up. Okay? So in other words, if they are tired and show to having low ATP with the repetitive aerobic response, this is a person who needs light therapy. Okay? So I thought for a while, you could give light therapy if a person's got an infection, because again, it boosts up the myeloperoxidase or the enzymes and things. But fundamentally, it's the person who's low in energy. So we can give them magnesium, we can give them the Bs and the CoQ10, whatever it is, but it's the light that they really need. They need to boost them. You need to get these people outdoors. They're always indoors all the time. And you notice that they always wear black clothes or dark clothes. And it seems as if, they're making their depression even worse and their low energy by the clothes. If they wore something bright, people who wear brighter clothes are usually full of energy, aren't they? Apologies to anybody wearing black.